Page 28, When I Fall in Love, from the movie 1 Minute to Zero. It's another love song. Big surprise. Not that I'm opposed to love songs, they're fine. It's just that it happens to be in the morning, and I'm not a morning person, and I'm not in the mood for love right here. That's a different song, though, isn't it? Anyway, this is in the key of E major, 4 sharp song. The melody's the top note in the right hand. We're going to bring it out when we can. You're starting out with a G sharp B. Now it's legato pedal throughout. We'll get to the pedal later. So the pedal is going to help us connect the notes because we got a lot of awkward hand movements going on. Like at the very first measure, it's here to here. You got to move from here to here. Or here. They say third finger. I like second, but third finger's okay. There is a way to connect them with the fingers if you want to feel it. You can do here, 4, and then do a thumb on the E sharp. Here, I'm just coming under. Third measure, same way if you want. I'll leave that up to you how you finger it, but last measure, we got 2 voices going on, and this happens in several places, so watch out here. This is a good reason not to use the pedal when you're learning it first, because the pedal will cover this stuff up. So at the last measure of the first line, it's here. I do a 1-3. They've got a 1-4 here. I don't know why, because you just used 4th finger on the G sharp. How can you use 4th finger again if you're going to connect them? So I do a 1-3 and then a 5. Hold the A down and then hold the F sharp down while you play the B. So the top note's a quarter note going on and the bottom note's 2 half notes. So it's, and then go on. Here you got to move. There's no way around it. And they're saying 3-5 on the second measure for the E sharp A. The E sharp is a whole note. Hold it down for the whole measure while you play the G sharp. And then you can go on, and they're saying 2-4-5. The F sharp is tied. You're going to hold it down while you play the B, D sharp in the last measure. And then you're going to lift up to the end of a phrase and move up and go on. Third line, second measure, 2 voices again. And then hold the D sharp down while you play the 8th notes. And I recommend a 3 on that 8th note if you can. So I can hold. If you can't, then you'll have to lift up off the D sharp, but I don't like doing that. And then lift up at the end of a phrase, at the end of the third line before you play the 8th notes. Now here in the last measure, the last line, second measure, that E sharp is only a dotted half note. So you're just going to hold it down for 3 counts. When you lift up on the quarter note, or sorry, the half note, lift up on the E sharp 2. And then at the top of page 29, it goes back to what you were doing before, and we're having fun all over again. Let's go down to the third line on page 29. Here. Then here. The melody's the top note, but you got 2 voices going on, so hold them down accordingly. It's here. See, you're overlapping the voices, you have to be careful with this. And then you can come to the EA. And it is an E natural there, because that E sharp is only good for that measure. It's not tied. There's no little line connecting those E's together. That bottom line, there's a phrase mark for each voice, and that's why we're doing that. It's confusing sometimes because they use the same symbol, that line, for 3 different things. And you have to, which is this? It's confusing. And then go on. Last line on page 29 here. G sharp there, the last two measures. So just work this out really, really slowly and carefully with the right hand so you're sort of comfortable with all these black keys and the accidentals and the phrasing and the multiple voices. Yeah. Then the left hand, broken chords, it's no big deal, I hope. They got some phrasing marked in the left hand. Go ahead and do it. Lift up between each phrase. Second measure. Second line. This is fine. I don't see a real problem here in the left hand. They go down to the third line. So the second measure is an A, E, F sharp to a B, F sharp A to a G sharp, D sharp, F sharp, and then a D sharp, F sharp, G sharp. And then you're coming out. Again, lift up between each of these phrases. Last two measures on page 28, you're here. They're saying 1, 2, 4, and then 5, 4, 2, 1. I should say 4, 2, 1. And then here, they just added the E, but nothing's tied, so you play them all. And then the last measure, D sharp, to B, the last note. And you get page 29, you're back to where you were doing before and having fun. That takes us down to the bottom of page 29 in the left hand. I'm going to start here. Well, let's go the last two measures of the third line. You're here. Remember, we got all these sharps in the key signature. It helps if you can play the E major scale. I got a video on E major scale. I'd encourage you to go follow it. The last measure, third line here. So D natural, F sharp, B sharp. Going into the last line. I do a 5-2 here, and then a 3-1 here, so I don't have to move my hands so much, and then a 5, 3, 4, and then here, and then the last two measures. Then they have a treble clef, so you got to cross over the right hand to up here, the G sharp B, and here. Notice in the last measure you also have an E, G sharp. You're going to play this chord. Figure out how you want to finger the chord, and that tells you the fingering you need to use on these notes. So a 1, 2 here if you want to, and then the last note is written here, but with the AVA you're going to play it down here. You can focus on the left hand here because the right hand is just holding those notes down. The kicker is you got to keep the left hand really, really, really soft because we want to hear this note. That's the melody. No matter what else is going on, we want to hear that note. So the left hand has to be really soft. The whole thing is sort of soft, and you'll see occasionally where you get a little louder and a little softer. And the idea is learn the notes because you got to put the hands together here. By the way, in the first measure in the right hand, that E sharp is only good for that measure. Remember? No? So work out really slowly putting the hands together, and when I do this either a measure at a time or a phrase at a time, and I'll focus on that first measure and I'll say, can I do the first measure? And then once I get that, is that about the second measure? And then third measure, I do it at that, and when I can get up to a phrase at a time, can I play like the first whole line to me is one phrase. It's just. And if I get that, then I can go on to the next, and I tackle the whole piece just a little bit at a time like this until I get it. There is a danger to learning a piece with this method. And that is that when you start practicing a piece, you don't always get all the way through it. Which means when you start at the beginning every time, you're going to learn the first part of the piece really well because you keep going over and over and over it. And as you progress through the piece, it's going to get worse and worse because you don't practice that stuff as much. There's a way to counteract that. It takes a lot of discipline, and I don't have that discipline. And one thing to do would be, okay, today skip page 28. Let's focus only on page 29. Because a lot of that on page 29 is the same as page 28. So you've got some of it already, or a lot of it already. Something, I don't know. So don't always practice a piece starting at the beginning, is what I'm saying. Some people actually will take it to the other extreme and say, well, I'm going to start at the end. And they'll find where's the last phrase or something, and they'll say, okay, it looks like it's the pickup to the last line on page 29. Because of the phrase marking. So they're going to say, okay, I'm going to focus on that first. So they'll learn that first. They'll get that, then they'll back up to the phrase in front of it, which looks like it's the last two eighth notes that are on the second line. Here. So they'll work on that and practice it to the end, and then they'll back up another phrase and practice it to the end. It works. Try it out and see what you think. My point is, don't always start at the beginning of the piece when you have a piece that you're really going to have to tear apart and struggle to learn. Then on top of all that, once you get the notes and your fingers working sort of right, and there's not a lot going on in dynamics here, and as far as articulation, it's all pretty much legato. Then you can add the pedal. And it's overlapping pedal. It looks like, for the most part, they're pedaling every 2 beats. Sometimes it's a whole measure, but they didn't use that ped simile nonsense. At least they've given you pedal markings throughout. So I'm going to suggest go ahead and pedal it like they're showing you to pedal it. I could make some changes, but I won't. Bite my tongue. And so I'm going to push the notes down right after the pedal, and I'm going to change it after I play the notes, each time. So it's here. How fast you take this, it says moderato, that's up to you. I'm sort of in the middle. You can take it slow at first because you got enough to think about, and once you get to know the piece, you start feeling it, then you'll have a better idea how fast you think it should go. Kind of depends on how much wine or beer you've had or something like that too. Make sure you bring out the melody. See that swell in the second line where you get up to here? The first note in the second line, second measure, that's where you're headed. And then you come down. Now, I would recommend you lift the pedal with the right hand so we can, you leave the left hand down, but lift the pedal with the right hand so we get a break in the phrase, and you don't need to pedal the 8th note. Now I pedal it every 2 beats in the last measure at the bottom. I don't want a lot of sound here. I'm coming to the end of a thought, and I'm going to lift the pedal with the hand so we get silence before we go on. Same swell we had before. Then bring it down. Again, lift the pedal up with the right hand here, so don't pedal the eighth notes. Dim E rit. Diminuendo, get softer, and retardando, slow down. All at the same time. It's multitasking. You just love it. Last line. Very soft, because we don't want to overpower the melody, which is the E in the right hand. And then at the end, I'm going to release the keys first, and then I'm slowly going to lift the pedal up and let the sound die away. Very effective. As far as the last beat, the last measure, and the 4 beats and all that, once you slow down to that point, you pretty much stop counting. It's totally by feel. It's almost like it had a fermata. You're just hanging on to it as long as you feel it should be there. That's it. And that's this piece. It's a beautiful piece. I highly recommend it if you can get past all the hand movements and all the sharps and stuff.